Hi there, class 12. Welcome to my channel. I am up, awake with you all, making this video for you for the remaining chapters of The Invisible Man. I really want to know how your pre-boards are going on because many of you were really worried about your exams. I hope you're doing very well. And the last video, I told you this summary of The Invisible Man till chapter 15. Today, let's move to chapter number 16 in The Jolly Cricketers. If you remember in the last chapter, that is chapter number 15, we were introduced to Kemp, another scientist, but who is a contrast in front of a contrast to the invisible man. He is completely an optimist, a positive scientist who believes in saving humanity. In contrast to that, we know that the invisible man, whose name still we do not know, as it is not yet revealed by the novelist, he is a person who is homicidal and he does not have any faith in humanity. He is not a well wisher of human beings because he wants to rule the people, rule the world. So, over to chapter number 16 in The Jolly Cricketers. If you remember, the setting of the last chapter was in the place Burdock. Dr. Camp, he lives in Burdock. Now, as Marvel was running in chapter number 15, he entered Jolly Cricketers, which is the name of a pub. He was shouting in the last chapter again, a little bit information I have to give you about that also in order to connect it to chapter number 16. uh, as he was running and as he was shouting that invisible man was coming and he was going to kill him, so he entered Jolly Cricketers, which is the name of a pub. At the time when he enters this pub, an anemic cabman is there, a black bearded American is there, and a policeman who is off his duty. These people are present, and when Marvel shouts that invisible man is coming, they should be shutting all the doors and windows. So they are a little bit surprised, but they close the doors. And Marvel reveals, that he tells them that invisible man was chasing him. This was a question which was asked by the policeman, that who's there. At that, Marvel says that he'll kill me. He's got a knife or something. And then he says, for God's sake, help me. And Marvel starts looking for a place to hide. He says, where shall I hide? And everything is quiet. The American, the cabman, and the policeman, and the other people who are present in the pub, they try to pacify Marvel, and all the doors are shut, making, just they're just trying to assure him that invisible man cannot come and harm him there. Then suddenly what happens, a window is broken and it is discovered by the barman that the yard door was also open, and the invisible man somehow enters Jolly Cricketers and starts beating Marvel. He drags him by the neck into the kitchen, and as all the screams and shouts and the clutter of pans is heard, the policeman rushes in the kitchen, and he warns the invisible man that he's going to shoot him. And finally, we learn that the American who was also present over there, he's also having a revolver. And the American with the black beard, he fires 5 times in circular pattern. See, obviously these people cannot see the invisible man, so he fires in the air 5 times in circular pattern so that he's sure that he's hit the invisible man. And now these people are sure that the invisible man is dead. He's not dead, we know that. One of the bullet hits him and he's injured and he starts bleeding, and he's left with no option but to leave this place, Jolly Cricketers. Otherwise, his blood is visible, and this definitely would help these people to grab hold of him. So the invisible man leaves Jolly Cricketers, while these people who are present in the pub, they start looking for the invisible body because they think that he must be dead. So, chapter number 17, Dr. Camp's Visitor. We know that Jolly Cricketers is there in Burdock only, where somewhere around Camp's house. And we come to know that Camp, he was working in his study in chapter number 15. He did not believe in the existence of the invisible man. He think that people have turned fools. He's a scientist. For him, invisibility is not possible. And this time also, he's still busy in his study when he hears the shots of the revolver fired in the Jolly Cricketers. And he grows restless and again is unable to understand what were those shots. He starts working again. And as he is just trying to finish his work, his doorbell rings. His maid opens the door, but there is no one to be seen. Obviously, this is invisible man who comes, and no one notices him. So, at around 2 a.m., as Kemp finishes his work, he decides to have a drink. Uh, and as he goes downstairs to have a drink, he notices that on the carpet blood drops were there, and even in his bedroom blood drops were there, and his bed sheet seems to him as if someone was sitting or lying on it. And suddenly he hears a low voice, and what does this low voice tell him? That is, Camp, keep your nerve. I am an invisible man. So the invisible man now talks to Camp and explains to him that he's invisible. He tells him to keep steady. He should not worry that he's invisible. And then he explains to Cam that I am an invisible man and it's no foolishness, no magic. And here in this chapter, as I told you, that till now we do not know the name of the invisible man. Here he says, I am Griffin of University College and I have made myself invisible. I am just an ordinary man, a man you have known. So here Griffin tells his name to Kemp. I would like to tell you that Kemp and Griffin were batchmates at Oxford University. Griffin also tells him that a younger student than you, he extels, he's just trying to help Kemp to recall that he was younger to him. They were both together at the Oxford University. And he says almost an albino, 6 feet high and broad, with a pink and white face and red eyes, who won the medal for chemistry. One thing I would like to tell you here, that Kemp and Griffin, they were both the students of chemistry. Griffin was an albino. He is an albino. Albinos are those people who have it's basically a disorder, a genetic disorder, in which these people, they have pale white pinkish skin. They are unable to face the sun, and these people, as I've told you, that the skin is pale. So the same case is the case with Griffin. And Kemp is quickly able to recall that yes, Griffin was there in his batch. After that, I would like to tell you here that Kemp and Griffin, they were both the students of chemistry, but later on, Griffin changed his subject to physics because he wanted to study optics, which is the study of light. He wanted to do the study of light, do research in optics because he wanted to be invisible. Why he wanted to be invisible? Because he was sure that invisibility would not only be making him famous but would be solving lots of his problems. As just now I told you that he is an albino, so his appearance is not very pleasant, soothing. According to people, he is ugly, and he is even being given comments by people for his appearance. So Griffin and Kemp, they were the students of chemistry, and later on Griffin changed his subject to physics, that is optics. So here Kemp really comes to understand that Griffin was his batchmate, and he could very well recall that. And it's really horrible, according to him, that how a man could be invisible. He is not convinced. He wants to know the reason how invisibility is possible. But Griffin is not interested in telling him any sort of information. He does not want to give him, because right now his concern was food and drink. He requests Kemp to give him some food and also asks him to give him a drink or so that he could relax. And Kemp gives him whiskey, clothes, and cigar. And he wants to know that how invisibility is possible. But Griffin is not interested because he's tired, he wants to sleep. And even here we learn that it is noticed, as Griffin wears the dressing gown of Kemp. So Kemp could see him now. And now he could see that his wrist is hurt, and he questions him about that what's the shot wound, asked Kemp. So at that, Griffin just explains to him that it's nothing serious, that's just a scratch, and little bit of blood was coming out. And finally Griffin is so tired, he really wants to sleep. He requests Kemp that he would be answering all his questions, but he should first let him sleep. And this is how this chapter concludes. Over to chapter number 18, that is The Invisible Man Sleeps. In this chapter, Griffin sleeps in Kemp's bedroom. Griffin sleeps, but Kemp is restless because he's a scientist. For him, invisibility is not possible. There are so many things going on in his mind. For a while, he lights a cigar and sits in his dining room and starts wondering that invisibility is possible, maybe because there are so many microscopic things, like things as well as aquatic animals, jellyfish, as well as so many small creatures who are there living in ponds and who are colorless, and they are like jelly. So yes, somewhere invisibility is possible. And Then he again thinks that how could a man be completely invisible, and starts thinking about Griffin. And then what comes to his mind that he should read the newspapers. And as he takes one of the newspaper, there's a strange story from Iping, which is published in that. And here he sees in one of the newspapers that all the people of Iping village, they were the evidences to the fact that Griffin was invisible. An entire village in Sussex goes mad. That is what is published. All the people of Iping who had seen Griffin getting invisible, their witnesses were there in the newspaper. The name of Mr. Huckster is there. The name of a vicar, that is Mr. Bunting, is there. The mention of Mrs. Hall is there. And other people who are the villagers of Iping. Here you can just please recall that the chapter Unveiling of the Stranger. The whole Iping village saw Griffin getting invisible. याद करिए थोड़ा that Griffin got invisible in front of the entire Iping village while he was in Coach and Horses. When he left Coach and Horses and he smashed the windows and he hit Jaffers, the police constable, and he even beats Huckster and so many other people. So that was the time. Now, Kemp is sure after reading the newspapers that yes, he was invisible, and the reference of a Marvel is also there. The reference of a tramp, that is Marvel, is also there in the newspaper. And finally, Kemp is sure that Griffin is homicidal. He can murder people for his selfish interests. And he is sure that Griffin is not a very positive person. And finally, we learn over here that Kemp is also able to understand that Marvel had run away with Griffin's 3 diaries, which were really important to him. And at this point of time, Kemp starts writing a note to Colonel Eddy, of who is the police chief. And in this letter, he writes about, he writes everything he knows about the invisible man, that is Griffin, to Eddy. And I think this is the thing which he does because Kemp is a positive character, and somewhere he feels that before Griffin could harm people, it should be in the notice of police, it should be in the notice of the police chief Eddy, so that the evil plans of Griffin, could not really work. At that point of time, Invisible Man, that is Griffin, who was sleeping, he gets up and he is never in good temper. He gets up and starts breaking things, and Kemp rushes to his room. So this chapter ends over here. Chapter number 19, Certain First Principle. So I would like to tell you that Kemp had already informed the police, that is Eddy, the police chief, and now he starts talking to Griffin. And as he reaches his room, he finds that he's in bad temper and he's not very happy. And After, taking breakfast, he starts telling about his story that after completing, while they were together in the university, after completing, you know, his research there, he went to Chestaway. Chestaway he went. Why? Because he wanted to study physics, he wanted to study optical density, as he wanted to be invisible. He thought that invisibility would be solving his problems, and he researched at that place. And finally, he had a feeling that he was successful. For 3 years, he worked on this optical density. He had to hide his work from his professor, Mr. Oliver. Otherwise, Mr. Oliver would have got published Griffin's research in his name and would have got the fame and popularity which he deserved. And finally, after working on this, while he was working on this formula of invisibility, he was short of money. So he went to his father asking him for money, and he steals his money. He stole his father's money, which did not belong to him. Why did he steal his money? Why did he steal his father's money? Because he was working with his research, and this he was working on this formula of invisibility, and he wanted money to carry on with his research. So he went to his father asking for some help. His father did have the money, but it was not his own money, and Griffin robs him, steals his money, and after that, his father commits suicide. So, here we can very well understand that what kind of character is he. His father commits suicide because he steals his money, but this does not actually affect him. He carries on with his research, that research of invisibility, that because that is the only thing which is important for him. He says, I robbed the old man, robbed my father. The money was not his, and he shot himself. So his father shoots himself, but Griffin is not at all sorry. So a very selfish character, definitely a villain. So, chapter number 20, at the house in Great Portland Street. Griffin keeps on talking to Camp. Camp stands near the window because he wants to make sure that Griffin should not see Colonel Eddie coming over. Remember, Camp had already informed him by writing him a letter. Now, Griffin continues with his story. He continues that he went to Chestaway just to research from Oxford University, London. He went to Chestaway. There, he researched, and as his research in optical density, it was somewhere, close to getting success. He came back to London and started living in Great Portland Street. And here, at this point of time, he was almost complete with his research, but he had to apply it. He had to practically see that whether he was successful or not. He confesses that he was not sorry for his father's death. His father's death did not affect him, and he had a feeling that his father was a foolish man. So, such people like him, their death should not affect anyone. And he now really thinks that he should be carrying on practically with his formula of invisibility and see whether he is going to be successful in that. He starts living in this house at Great Portland Street in London. After his father's funeral, he returns back to his apartment and continues with his experiments. He did not really feel sorry for his death. So, firstly, he makes wool disappear, and then there is a cat which is there in the building, and he starts experimenting on the cat. The cat makes lots of noise because the process of invisibility is quite painful. Uh, an old lady who is living in the neighborhood, she comes looking for the cat as she suspects Griffin of having caught the cat. She questions Griffin about him, but Griffin does not reply. He is working now on the cat to make it invisible. Cat partially becomes invisible, but its eyes and claws are the most difficult parts. These are still visible. Griffin continues with his experiments, and we come to know that the old lady is not convinced with his answer. She goes to the landlord seeking his help because she is sure that Griffin was doing some experiments, some secret experiments which were not in favor of humanity. And he was also, she also blames him of vivisection, doing experiments on animals. She's not very happy with him, complains to the landlord. There is an argument between the landlord and Griffin, and we come to know that Griffin does not very convincingly answer his questions, and the cat is partially invisible, and Griffin now, he lets it just go out of the window as it finally becomes invisible. And after that, he drinks the potion of invisibility because now he wants to see whether it would be possible for him to be invisible. When the landlord comes to his room to talk to him, at that point of time, he notices that his face was changed because the process of invisibility had already started. And then we come to know that he is visible, but the process of invisibility started. The landlord comes again to his room with his sons, and he wants to question him further because, as I already told you, that he was not convinced with his answers. And at that point of time, the landlord comes with his sons and the old lady, and they keep on knocking, but Griffin does not open the door. The process of invisibility was almost successful. Griffin packs up his important things like his diaries, 3 diaries, and his checkbook, and just posts it to an address from where he would be collecting it later on. Finally, when the landlord's son and the old lady enter his room after breaking open the door, he is invisible. And then, before leaving his room, because he's invisible now, no one would see him, he sets his room on fire because he does not want any evidence to be left. So, when the old man, that is the landlord, and his sons and the old lady, they reach his room, they are unable to find anything. And Griffin, very confidently, very happily, moves out of his room because now he is invisible. He had cherished this dream from a very long time, and now this has come true. So he becomes invisible in this chapter. So hoping that you will be listening to this and you would be following it. I conclude here. In my next video, I would be covering up the remaining novel. Please subscribe to my channel for whatever uploads relating to your English core lessons I would be doing. And I would also be uploading videos in the near future relating to writing section, as many of you have requested me, and definitely I would be telling you that how you can score better marks in English core. So till then, bye bye, take care.